Good morning, guys. We're going to go ahead and get started on the next section of Chapter 9, which is Section 3. And today we're going to talk about frequency tables and dot plots. Now, there is a page of cutouts that goes along with this set of notes. So if you have not printed those out yet, please pause the video and go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we will get started. Let's begin with a little bit of vocab. Alright, and the first thing we're going to talk about is frequency tables. What are they exactly? So I'm going to write down frequency tables. And a frequency table is a table. Here, there we go. That lists out each item or number in a data set, so a set or group of numbers, with the number of times each item or number occurs. Remember when we were talking about mode in the last section, how a number can occur more than one time when we're talking about a data set? Well, a frequency table measures, well, how many times does each one happen or occur? So, I'm going to go ahead and put in number 1. Alright, and this is where we're going to talk about frequency tables. And I'm going to put A, and I'm going to put in my first cutout, which looks like this. So I'm going to pause and glue in. Please do the same. Alright, so mine is glued in. And you can see we've got a list of colors here. I think someone was doing some sort of survey of their classmates to see, what their favorite color was. So to make a frequency table, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make 3 columns over on this side. This will be the colors that I have. Then I'm going to make tally marks. Tallies, we'll do it that way. And then over here, I'm going to write the number of tallies. So this will be the frequency. Okay. So I'm going to list out my colors first. We've got blue, purple, red, yellow is in there, green, orange. I'm just listing which ones I have. I think those are all the colors I'm seeing here. Yeah. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the list and I'm going to see how many times I see the word blue, how many times I see the word purple, how many times I see the word red, and that's what I'm going to do here, put my tally marks. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to put my tallies in, and I'll be back in just a sec. Alright, so I have all my tallies in, and what I did is as I made a tally mark, I would go through and cross it out, just so I didn't, confuse it for another color or accidentally add it in somewhere else. Just kind of helps keep me organized. Now what I'm going to do, over on the side here, I'm just going to see how many tallies I had for each color. Blue had 6, purple had 2, 2 for red, 3 for yellow, 2 for green, and 1 for orange. So you can see very easily which colors were the most popular and which ones were the least popular. So this is how you make a frequency table. You start by listing out all your items, you make tallies, and then you count the tallies up. Pretty straightforward. Let's try another one. And this is going to be my next glue in, so I'm at the top of a new page. I'm going to put a letter B, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that in. I'm going to pause. Please glue this in as well. Alright, so I have mine glued in. Let's go ahead and get started. It says the first initials of the names of 15 students are listed below. Organize the data in a frequency table and then find the mode. So let's go ahead and set this up, and then we will see what our mode or our most frequent letter is. So I'll put my letters here. Then I'll also do my tally marks, and then the frequency. And when I'm done, I'll actually go ahead and highlight the mode. Alright, so let's see. I've got A, J, B, K, L, C, I already put K, D, I already had L, S, T, I already put D, B, and P. I think that's all of them. Oh, a lot of letters here. Alright, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my tally marks for each letter. So I'm going to pause and you'll see my tally marks in just a second. Alright, so here are my tallies, and again, as I went through and made my tally marks, I crossed them off as I went along. So let's write in our frequency. A only occurs once, J is once, B is once, K is 2 times, L is 3 times, C is once, D is twice, and then 1 for all the other guys. So, pretty easy to see what our mode letter is, the one that occurs most often, and that would be L. It only occurs 1 extra time than everything else, but it is our mode because it has it occurred 3 times versus everything else, which was just once or maybe twice. All right. So that is how you make a frequency table. We're going to do another vocab word, and it is the kind of like the second part of our section here, where we talk about dot plots. So I'm going to go ahead and write this in, dot plots. Now a dot plot also kind of measures how often numbers or items occur in a data set. So it lists each item in a data set, just like a frequency table does, but it kind of shows the shape of the data, and I'll explain what I mean by shape in a moment. Shows shape of data. Kind of like how it's spread out, in what way, how it's distributed. And these are also sometimes known as line plots. So if you ever see line plot, just know line plot, dot plot, they're the same thing. Alright. I actually need a little more space than what I have at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead up to a new page. And I'm going to put number 2. And I'm going to put letter A. And this is where you're going to put your next cutout, which, let me just make sure it's the right one. Yeah. Going to be this guy right here. So I'm going to pause and glue in. Please do the same. Alright. So, I'm going to go ahead and read this one and then we will get started. So it says, the number of DVDs each customer rents when he or she visits a video store are, and then it lists out all the numbers. Then it says use a dot plot to interpret the data. So we first need to make a dot plot, and then we'll get to that part. So here's how you make a dot plot. I'm going to start by making a number line, just like this. And from what I'm seeing, all of my numbers here range from 1 being the smallest and 6 being the highest. So when I set up, whoops, I just said 1, not 2. When I set up my number line, I want to make sure that I include everything that's in between. So from the lowest to the highest. Oh, and you know what? I need to bring this down a bit. Sorry, guys. Definitely don't have enough space. Give yourself enough space to do this because I am going to be working kind of like above it. There we go. That's a little bit better. Alrighty. So, it's very important to put everything in between the lowest and the highest, even if it doesn't occur in the data set. So let's say, for example, for some reason, nobody rented 2 DVDs. I would still include it because it's in between 1 and 6. So what I'm going to do now, instead of making tally marks this time, I'm going to put little, you can use dots like this, or you can use X's. It's up to you. I'm going to use dots, and we're going to put, for however many times I see 1, I'm going to put a dot for each time I see it. So let me show you how to do the first one, and then I'm going to pause and do the rest. So how many times do I see 1? I see it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So I'm going to put 4 dots above 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sense? So I'm going to pause and I'm going to do the other numbers. Please do those as well. Alright, so here are all my dots for each number of DVDs that people bought. And you know what? I should probably put that number of DVDs. Oh, is it rented? Rented. Just so if someone were to look at this, they'd be able to tell, what they're looking at. So, by looking at my dot plot, I'd be able to see each of these dots represents a person renting that number of DVDs. So, actually, I'm going to make a key off to the side here. Let me cross that out. My dot, and I'm going to put a line, represents 1 person. So if I were to look at this, I'd say, okay, there were 2 people that came into the store who each rented 4 DVDs. If I look here, I see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people came into the store, and these 6 people each rented 2 DVDs. So by looking at this, I can see, we're actually going to do this part right now, where it says, use the dot plot to interpret the data. What I can see is that most people who came in rented between 1 and 3 DVDs, with 2 DVDs being the most popular amount of DVDs. So I'm actually going to write that down kind of in a sentence form. Most people rented between 1 to 3 DVDs. 2 DVDs was the most popular amount. Or, I shouldn't say popular. Bad word. Most frequent amount. Alright, so that is interpreting the data. We can see kind of like how it's spread out, and this is what we mean by the shape. You can see how almost everything is kind of chunked down here with the fewer amount of DVDs, while the higher amounts, it's kind of like, there's only a few up here. Let's try another one. I'm going to put a letter B and get my next glue in, which looks like this. So I'm going to pause and glue in. Please do the same. Alright, so mine is glued in. So it says, use a dot plot to interpret the number of sales calls made each hour. So this would be, this is the number of calls that someone makes each hour, or maybe like a group of people. So I'm seeing that my lowest here is 0, and it looks like my highest is 9. So when I go to set up my number line, And again, I'm going to give myself some space to do this because I have to work above my number line. I'm going to have my smallest number be 0, my largest number be 9, and put every other number in between, even if it doesn't occur in the data set. Ooh, I did not spread this out properly. That's okay, close enough. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and once again, you're either going to use dots or X's. I'm going to use dots. And the dots are going to represent one person. Alright, because I'm assuming that whoever's making the call is a person. It could be like a automatic answering machine, but doesn't matter. Anyway, each dot is going to represent the number of people making that number of calls each hour. So I'm going to pause, put in my dots. Please do the same. Okay, so here is how everything kind of played itself out here. It was interesting because as I forgot to cross that one out. As I was going through it, I noticed there were no people who made 4 calls in an hour, and there were no people who made 5 calls in an hour. It's kind of like spread out at either end of the number line. Either it was like a really low amount of calls or really high. The second highest one was 8 calls per hour. So maybe like, you guys probably have never had to do this, but if you're on a phone with somebody, my assumption is either you're, talking to them for a long time, or whatever they're selling, maybe people aren't interested, so everyone keeps hanging up on them. So either they're talking to people for a while, which is why it's at the lower end, or everyone keeps hanging up on them, which is why it's up here at the higher end. So that would be interpreting the data there. Actually, let me write something like that down. To interpret the data. Where's my highlighter? That's what we're doing right now. To interpret. If you're interpreting data, it means just by looking at it, tell me what you know. So I'm going to say either each person made few calls. Whoop, few. Don't know what I'm spelling. That's a W. Few calls. Which means that they probably talked to the person for a while. Talked to person for a while. Or each person made many calls. You know what? I shouldn't say few. I should say, there, by few I mean between 0 to 2. And when I say many, I mean between 6 to 8. Because 8 was the most frequent there. So made many calls, did not talk for a while. Alright. So by looking at the data, I was able to kind of, come up with some sort of interpretation of it. Now, there's one more thing we're going to do in this section, and it's something that we kind of talked about. You might have seen it in IXL, and it has to do with like how our data is spread out. Like, remember how I said we always start with the smallest and end with the highest? That is called our range. So I'm going to flip over here, and that's going to be the last word that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to put a 3. This is the range. And it's how much your data is spread out. How far the data is spread out. Okay? And it's very easy to calculate. it is your largest number minus your smallest number. That is how you calculate your range. Pretty straightforward. Oh, and just an FYI, guys, if you see data, that is plural. So, for example, in the one that I'm about to do, the one that I'm about to glue in, all right, all of this here is the data, but if I'm looking at one number, it is a datum. D-A, how do you spell that? D-A-T-U-M, I'm pretty sure. So this is one datum. The whole thing is data. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'm going to put a letter A and glue this in. All right, let's get started. So it says in 1849 and 1850, 6 different surveyors made the following measurements of the height of Mount Everest, and they're all listed right here. What is the range of the measurements? Now, before we get started on that, why do you think these would all be different for the height of Mount Everest? Well, if you think about it, it's not like you're going to take a gigantic tape measure and go from the bottom of Mount Everest to the top. So they're using some sort of maybe like triangulation. They're doing their best estimation, and that's why you have different ones. It's not like everybody's going to get the exact same number. Maybe one person's using this method, someone else is using a different method. So let's go ahead and locate our highest and our lowest. So it looks like this one here is our highest. Oh, did they put them in order for us? Oh, that was so nice of them. Yes, they did. There's our highest, and there is our lowest. And to calculate the range, we're going to go ahead and take the highest number and subtract the lowest number. And the answer is going to be our range. Alright, I actually don't need all the zeros. There we go. Alright, so after subtracting, I found that it's 36. So the range of this data is 36, and what are we dealing with? Feet. You always want to put your label. Very important. What are we talking about? Are we talking about 36 cats? 36 jelly beans? No, we're talking about 36 feet. So that is how you do range. Let's do one more. And that's our very last glue in. So I'm going to glue that in right now. Alright, here we go. So it says the number of pottery items made by students are, and then it lists out all the different ones. Find the range of the data. So again, we want to find our highest, find our lowest, and subtract. It looks like our highest is 36, and our lowest is 5. Oh, nope, sorry, not 5. It's 4. There we go. So, finding our range should be pretty easy. All we have to do, 36 minus 4, that gives us 32. So our range for this particular problem is 32 pottery items? I guess so. Pottery items. So I guess, whoever made 36, they're really, making stuff. They're got new ideas every day, making something else, and this poor person only made 4. Or maybe they, made really big ones that required more time or something. Who knows? So we're going to go ahead and pause there, and I'm going to have you guys practice these skills over on IXL.